Greetings. My name is Evelyn, and I'm 31 years old. I've recently gone through a divorce, and the backstory is quite something. I'm here to share it with you. Let's begin with how I met George, my now ex-husband. Our story started on a dating app. We hit it off almost immediately due to our similar interests and had great conversations over text. For our first date, we chose a local bar, which turned out to be a lot of fun, and that night laid the foundation for many more dates to come. Soon enough, we were looking for any reason to spend time together, and before I knew it, we were seriously dating. At that time, both of us were employed, but my job paid significantly more. George was still living with his parents while I owned my own house, so naturally he spent more time at my place than I did at his. I had met his parents, Lori and Justin, a few times, and they seemed nice, though our interactions were brief. About a year and a half into our relationship, I asked George to move in with me. This was a pivotal moment for us. It brought us even closer. The following 3 years were nothing short of blissful, so when George proposed, I didn't hesitate to say yes. Our wedding was a beautiful, elegant affair, attended by many friends and family members. It was around the time of our wedding that I got to interact more with his family. Given my demanding job, I was usually too exhausted to engage in much else besides work, but George was always understanding. At the wedding, Lori invited me to have dinner at their place the following week. I thought it was a good opportunity to spend more quality time with them, so I accepted. When we arrived for dinner, Lori and Justin welcomed me warmly. The dinner table was beautifully set, and each plate was already served as we sat down. Lori was particular about where I should sit, which I found odd, but I didn't dwell on it. The dinner went wonderfully, and I genuinely enjoyed my time. Throughout the evening, they kept expressing their gratitude for all that I was doing for George. It was a pleasant experience that made me feel closer to his family. Certainly, I told him that I loved him deeply and would do anything for him. However, when I got home that day, my stomach started to churn uncomfortably and the pain was intense. I felt like I was going to be sick, and indeed, I ended up vomiting everything I had eaten that day. George was there, supportively holding my hair back as I got sick. At the time, I didn't suspect it had anything to do with Lori's cooking. I had eaten ceviche with friends earlier and assumed that was the culprit. 5 months later, Lori and Justin invited us over again. With my busy work schedule, I hadn't had much time to visit, so I saw it as a perfect opportunity to catch up. Yet, Lori was peculiarly insistent about where I should sit at the dinner table. After that evening, I returned home and again fell violently ill. This was when I started to suspect that something unusual was happening. I refrained from saying anything at the time. It seemed impolite to accuse Lori without any solid evidence, especially knowing how much George adored and respected his mother. He wouldn't have believed me without proof. A few months later, the same scenario repeated itself, and this time I couldn't stay silent. I confronted George. "We need to talk. Don't you find it strange that every time we eat at your parents' place, I get extremely sick?" "What are you implying?" George asked, clearly on edge. "It's just odd, isn't it? We eat out all the time and nothing happens. But it's only at your parents' place that I get sick." "Are you suggesting your mom might be tampering with the food?" "If that's what you think," he replied defensively. "Do you have any proof?" "No, but how dare you accuse her of such a thing? My mother is the kindest person. She would never do anything like that." "George, I love you and I know you love your mom, but getting sick 4 times under the same circumstances is hard to ignore. Please, let's not dismiss this as just a theory. It's important." George, frustrated and upset, decided to sleep in the guest bedroom that night. Although I regretted causing any upset, I couldn't ignore the pattern that had emerged. I grew increasingly wary and paranoid about eating at his parents' house, convinced that something was not right. Given the situation, I decided to avoid causing any drama between George, his parents, and myself, so I began making excuses not to visit their house. However, there was a noticeable change in George's demeanor after these dinners. He would return acting closed off and distant. No matter how I tried to engage him in conversation, he remained unresponsive. Looking back, I suspect that was around the time he discovered what Lori had been doing to my food. Despite my reservations, I couldn't always avoid their invitations, especially not for significant events like Lori and Justin's anniversary or Justin's birthday. I felt compelled to attend these gatherings. Predictably, after each event, I returned home feeling ill. The first time, I kept my discomfort to myself, but after falling sick again following the second event, I brought it up with George. This led to a massive argument as he perceived my concerns as direct accusations against his mother. It was deeply frustrating. I was the one suffering, yet my attempts to discuss my health concerns were seen as attacks on his family. Each conversation about my illness ended in conflict, with George interpreting it as a personal affront. Exhausted from the constant arguments and the recurring illness, I reluctantly attended another dinner, this time celebrating Justin's raise. As expected, I fell ill once again. This was the 7th occurrence, and it was too much to dismiss as mere coincidence. I had spent too much time rationalizing these incidents as bad luck or unrelated to the dinners at George's parents' house, but the pattern was clear. Knowing that Lori's birthday was approaching and anticipating yet another dinner invitation, I decided I needed to take action. George remained convinced of his parents' innocence, so I knew I couldn't rely on his help. Determined to uncover the truth, I prepared to investigate during the next dinner. I purchased a hidden camera disguised as a common accessory, just in case I couldn't freely snoop around. As the day arrived, I readied myself both mentally and with my hidden camera to finally get to the bottom of what was happening at George's parents' house. I greeted them with a warm smile and offered Lori my help in the kitchen, but she was resolute that I should not assist her. "Why don't I help you with the food?" I asked, eager to be involved. "Oh no, absolutely not," Lori responded quickly. "But it's your birthday, why don't you relax while I handle things?" "No, you should go sit down, especially since you're our guest." "Nonsense, I'm your daughter-in-law. We're family," I insisted, trying to bridge the distance. "Evelyn, it's okay. I have a lot to get done and I don't need any help," she replied firmly. "If you insist," I conceded, "but let me know if you need help setting the dishes or even washing them afterward." "Oh yes, you can do that. But first I need George's help in the kitchen." What could he do that I can't? "Nothing. I just need him to get something heavy from the top cabinet." "All right, I'll be sitting on the patio, but first I'll just grab myself a bottle of water," I said, still puzzled by her insistence on me not helping. Her determination to keep me away from the kitchen preparations only deepened my suspicions. Why did she specifically need George's help? I was tall and quite strong, a fact I'm confident about as I work out regularly at the gym. I didn't want to believe that George could be involved, but his adamant claims that nothing was wrong with the food at his parents' place made me wonder if he knew what was happening. I wasn't sure how to feel about the possibility of him being complicit, but I knew that I had to address this issue. First, I needed to find a discreet place to set up the hidden camera, ideally one that would capture the stove where Lori was cooking. Thankfully, Lori, George, and Justin were too engrossed in their conversation to notice my extended absence. I also decided to look around and see if I could find anything unusual myself. I didn't have to search far. Right next to the stove, on the counter, was a collection of spices, among which was an open bottle of nutmeg. I am highly sensitive to nutmeg. My body reacts to it as though it were a harmful invader, causing symptoms like stomach aches, nausea, vomiting, and diarrhea, all symptoms I had experienced every time I dined at their place. The sight of the open nutmeg bottle sent a surge of anger through me. I remember informing George about my nutmeg allergy during my first dinner at their house. Had Lori been deliberately adding it to my food? And was George aware and still allowing it to happen? The betrayal stung deeply, and I knew I had to confront this situation head on. I managed to steady my nerves by reminding myself that the camera footage would soon answer all my questions. I grabbed a bottle of water and settled myself on the patio. It wasn't long before Justin came out to join me. Sensing an opportunity, I decided to subtly probe to see if he had any knowledge of the ongoing issues. "So, how's everything, Justin?" I asked, trying to sound casual. "Not so great. My health has been a bit off," I confessed, hoping to gauge his reaction. "Oh no, what's going on?" Justin's concern seemed genuine. "Well, I've been having some really bad stomach aches and diarrhea. It's strange because it only happens after I eat here." "I'm sorry to hear that. Is there something you're allergic to?" "Yeah, nutmeg. But that's it, really," I explained, watching his expression carefully. "Well, I can assure you it's not that. Lori despises nutmeg, so I can't imagine it being used here," Justin replied, looking puzzled. "Does this not happen when you eat elsewhere?" "No, I've tested it out, and it only occurs after eating here. I guess I might visit the doctor if it happens again after tonight." "Do let me know if you need any help," he offered, confirming to me that Justin was likely unaware of any deliberate wrongdoing. His demeanor was too sincere, and from past experiences, I knew he wasn't capable of maintaining a deception. Keeping secrets was not his forte. When Lori called us in for dinner, I used the opportunity to excuse myself to retrieve the camera discreetly. I walked into the kitchen, quietly removed the camera from where I had mounted it on the wall, and then returned to the dining table to join everyone for the meal. Resolved to endure just one more night, I ate what was served, knowing that I couldn't check the footage until I was back home. Sure enough, by the time I returned home, I was ill once again. The frequency of these episodes hadn't lessened their severity. It felt as harrowing as the first time. George barely acknowledged my distress, which deepened my suspicion of his involvement. I waited for him to fall asleep, enduring my discomfort, before I dared to extract the SD card from the camera and load it into my laptop. My hands trembled slightly as I prepared to view the footage. The implications of what it might show weighed heavily on me. I wasn't sure how I'd cope if my suspicions were confirmed. As the video played, my worst fears materialized before my eyes. I saw Lori and George chatting amiably as she cooked. The ease of their interaction and the casual manner in which they spoke suggested a troubling level of complicity. The realization hit me hard, and I sat back, overwhelmed by the confirmation of their betrayal. When I saw Lori pick up the bottle of nutmeg and add it to the stew while George laughed, I was utterly shocked. Knowing how much I had been suffering, it was devastating to see George complicit in causing me pain. Despite feeling betrayed, I decided to keep my discovery a secret from them for the moment, maintaining a facade of normalcy while I strategized my next steps. The very next day, instead of going to work, I headed straight to a lawyer's office to initiate divorce proceedings. After that, I went to my mom's house, needing her support to sort through the turmoil. "Hi, honey, what brings you here today? Is everything all right?" My mom greeted me with concern. "Hi, Mom. Everything's falling apart," I confessed, feeling the weight of my situation. "Oh no, what happened?" "I'm getting a divorce," I told her bluntly. "What? Why?" She was clearly stunned. For the past few months, every time I went to dinner at Lori and Justin's, I'd come back home sick. I told George that Lori must be behind it, but he always dismissed my concerns, I explained. "That's terrible. Do you think she was adding nutmeg?" "It's not just a suspicion anymore. I set up a hidden camera and caught everything on video. I saw her adding nutmeg and laughing about it," I said, revealing the extent of the betrayal. "What a horrible woman. And how are you feeling right now?" she asked, visibly upset on my behalf. "I'm okay now, but I wasn't last night. That's why I'm getting a divorce." George stood by Lori as she did it and even laughed with her. "That's unforgivable," she said, her tone firm. "You're welcome to stay here as long as you need. I'm here to support you through this." "Thanks, Mom," I was also wondering, do you think we could do something to get back at them? I ventured, feeling a mix of anger and desperation. Absolutely, but first let's have some lunch. I promise no nutmeg, she reassured me with a slight smile, trying to lighten the mood. Being with my mom helped soothe my frayed nerves. We spent lunch chatting about other things, momentarily putting aside the heavy topic of my impending divorce. After lunch, we settled on the couch and began brainstorming potential ways to retaliate. Eventually, we decided to tamper with Lori's food, ensuring George would understand just a fraction of the hurt he had allowed me to endure. When I handed George the divorce papers, I felt a strange mix of relief and determination. Thankfully, we had always kept our finances separate, and the house was in my name. He wouldn't be getting anything from me and would have to move back in with his parents. While the idea of messing with Lori's food was briefly satisfying, doing it at a small gathering wouldn't have the impact I wanted. I needed a larger stage, a setting where the effects could be more dramatic. A perfect opportunity presented itself. It was my mom's 52nd birthday in 3 weeks, a milestone worthy of a grand celebration. What better way to combine a family gathering with a bit of covert revenge? Plus, the idea of Lori facing some form of public embarrassment made the plan even more appealing. That evening, I discussed the idea with George, feigning normalcy despite the circumstances. "So, it's my mom's birthday pretty soon," I started. "Oh, right. Is she planning something?" he asked, clueless about my intentions. "Not really. I was thinking, do you think we could throw her a surprise party here? It's her 52th, after all," I suggested. "I don't mind, but why our place?" he questioned. "I thought a surprise party would be nice considering the milestone," I replied. "Oh yeah, we can do that," he agreed, more easily than I had anticipated. "Great. And about the guests, who do you think we should invite?" "Well, definitely your family, and see if her friends would like to join too," he said. "Sounds great. You know what? Invite your family too," I added. "Are you sure? My family isn't exactly close to yours." He noted a hint of surprise in his voice. "It's all right. We can bond them. We'll make this a big celebration," I assured him, hiding my true motives with a smile. Everything was falling into place. I busied myself with the party preparations the following week. I handled all the food and cleaned the place up. Since filing for divorce, I had begun to notice even more things about George that irked me, like his lack of effort to help with the party preparations and his preferring to watch TV instead. This only solidified my decision to leave him. As the party day arrived, our backyard was filled with guests ready to surprise my mom. The evening unfolded beautifully, and when dinner time came, I had everything under control. I served everyone's food, which was already plated. This setup allowed me to discreetly alter Lori's plate. Now, it was just a matter of seeing how the evening would unfold with my carefully laid plans. In the birthday celebration, I saw an opportunity to turn the tables on Lori in a way that mimicked the distress I had endured. Knowing her well enough to suspect she didn't have any food allergies, I opted to mix a strong laxative into her food instead. This would induce similar symptoms to those I had suffered, serving as a poetic form of justice. About half an hour after everyone had started eating, I noticed Lori beginning to squirm uncomfortably in her seat. She excused herself to use the restroom, but fate, or a bit of planned inconvenience, left her with no immediate relief. We had 2 bathrooms. My mother occupied one under my instruction to delay for a few minutes, while I discreetly locked the other. Lori's discomfort escalated quickly. Her face paled and she broke into a sweat. Seizing the moment to highlight her plight, I called out to her with feigned concern, "Lori, are you okay?" This drew the attention of the entire party to her, amplifying her embarrassment. She muttered that she was fine just as my mom emerged from one bathroom, apologizing for taking so long because she had been touching up her makeup. This seemed to infuriate Lori even more, which, in the setting, appeared comically out of proportion to the mild inconvenience. The crowd's focus drifted back to their conversations until a series of unmistakable sounds echoed from the bathroom, silencing the chatter. The room fell eerily quiet as everyone's attention snapped to the source of the noise. When Lori finally emerged, her face flushed with embarrassment, the room couldn't hold back and laughter erupted. Furious, Lori stormed up to me and jabbed a finger into my chest. "You did this," she accused, her voice tense with anger. "What do you mean?" I feigned ignorance. "I know you messed with my food." "Oh, Lori, I really don't think so," I replied calmly. "Then why am I the only one with an upset stomach? Wait, is this why you asked me to invite my family too? So you could mess with my mom?" "George, I know you have your suspicions," I turned to him as he interjected, "but this has gone too far. You're hurting my mother." "What suspicion are you talking about?" I asked, playing along. "The silly one about my mom messing with your food whenever we go to my folks' place to eat," he replied. "Oh, you mean like this?" I said, and at that moment, I sent the video I had captured from the hidden camera to every guest's phone. The pings of incoming messages coincided with Lori and George receiving the same video. As everyone watched the footage of Lori deliberately putting something into the stew while she and George laughed, the atmosphere shifted dramatically. "So, it was just a silly doubt, George?" I addressed him as the reality of what was in the video sank in for everyone. "You know what's in that bottle, nutmeg. You know how bad my allergies are, and yet you stood by Lori while she did this." The tables had turned, and as the truth of the situation became clear to all, the ramifications of their actions began to settle in, leaving George and Lori to confront the consequences of their deceit. "I swear it's not what you think," George stammered, his face a mix of shock and desperation. "I don't see any other explanation," I retorted, my patience exhausted. "I can't stand this anymore." I handed him the divorce papers. "Get out of my house and my life." "No, don't do that." "George is innocent," Lori interjected, stepping forward. "I did it because I never liked you, and I knew George would never say a word against me." Hearing this was a bitter pill to swallow. "That's even worse," I responded sharply. "If my husband can't stand up for me against his mother, he doesn't deserve to be my husband. You know, you're lucky all I'm doing is this. I could have pressed charges, but I'll let it go if you both just leave quietly." With that, Lori and George left without another word. Justin lingered behind, his expression somber, apologizing for everything that had transpired. I reassured him that he wasn't at fault and had nothing to apologize for. I even asked him to stay and continue the celebration with us. It was clear, though, that Lori and George's actions had severely damaged their standing within the family. Now, my divorce has been finalized and I am officially a free woman. The whole ordeal will take some time to process. Even though I stood strong through the storm, the quiet that follows feels heavy. The reality that I will never spend another day in George's arms does ache. I will miss that. But I know I'm strong enough to move past this and find happiness again. For those curious, my mom was thrilled with how things turned out. To celebrate her milestone birthday and to thank her for her unwavering support, I took her out to a fancy restaurant. It was a lovely day, a bright spot after a tumultuous time, and a reminder of the strong support system I have in my life.